Hey, everybody, and welcome to another exciting live episode of Prepper Talk Radio. And we've got a special guest. As usual, I'm Scott. We've got Paris and Shane in the house. And we've got our good friend Backroads Nomadlander. Do you like us to continue to call you by that for YouTube, or do you want us to use a different name for you?
Well, you can call me whatever comes to mind. It all works.
Well, we're excited to have you because you've just gone through a pretty rough go. If I remember, it was 6 days without power.
Yeah.
So this is going to be fun. Give you guys, the listeners, everyone that's participating in the live chat, a real good glimpse of what it's like for a sustained power outage and what it's like living on your own. I mean, it's true freedom that way. A lot of liberty going on there. So we're going to just kind of get into it and also talk a little bit about an article you just recently published about what's really going on, the bad ideas of the catchphrase bugging out, right? A little bit of the state of affairs, going to federal martial law, looting, curfews, lockdowns. But let's jump in. For those of you guys joining us on the live stream, make sure you hit that follow and like, turn on notifications so you'll be notified when we go live, and you can join in and participate, ask questions. But maybe we'll pick one of you guys to be our next guest in our next live. So Backroads, what happened? How did the power go out for our listeners? Tell us kind of the story, what happened, and how did you deal with it?
Well, I'm currently down in New Mexico helping one of my clients who is getting prepared for what's coming. For those that don't know, I have a business called Field Tech Self-Reliance that I started back in 1998 in lieu of the Y2K, and I had a lot of clientele that I helped get prepared for the possibility of Y2K when it rolled over to 2000. And I still have a lot of the clientele.
Can you pull your mic a little bit closer?
Is that better?
Yep.
I think so.
There we go.
How's
that?
Test 1 2.
It's still a little quiet.
Let me see if I can go in here and turn up the mic.
So for those of you who are just joining, Backroads started his company back in you said 89 or 99?
98.
98. With the fundamentals of preparedness: plan, train, prepare, and defend.
Yeah. So where does the name come from? Where did you get the Backroads Nomadlander from? What does that mean to you?
I started nomad lifestyle in 1999. I got divorced in 1995. Went through a hellacious divorce. A lot of situations, a lot of money spent on the divorce because my ex-wife had run up some credit card bills and actually was buying things for her then boyfriend and trying to get me to pay for them in the divorce. So I went through a long, arduous process, got rid of all credit cards at that point, and decided to start looking to go nomad on the road because I had been traveling. I had a hunting show back in the 80s and 90s, and I did a lot of traveling. And I wanted to just live the nomad life and travel the country and explore all the 50 states on my own terms. And that's what I started doing in 99. I bought a 1994 E150 conversion van and did some interior conversions on it. Started a YouTube channel in 2005 called Dusty Roads Adventures. That got shut down in 2011 due to some extraneous circumstances. And then 2014 started Tactical Nomad, which then I changed into Backroads Nomad due to the fact that YouTube didn't like the tactical in my name, and I was getting a lot of grief for it. I've been through some lawyer involved situations with YouTube over the years.
Wow.
To trying to silence those of us that are in this community, but the nomad part came hand in hand with teaching people self-reliance skills. And I was traveling around starting in 98. I had a following from when I was teaching self-reliance way back in the day. and people started contacting me about getting ready for Y2K. So I was doing a lot of traveling and consulting and getting people ready for the possibility of Y2K.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, and now it's coming back around full circle because I've got a lot of people that are contacting me now, getting ready for what's coming with the state of affairs in the country and around the world.
What's funny is like I remember Y2K. I was in the tech field and I was like so not worried. Like everyone's like, "Oh, we're," and people who prep, they don't stress about stuff like that. We're like, "Oh, all right, we'll showcase our skills." But I was so not worried. I had my food stored. I had emergency medical. I had a plan, and I was just like, I don't think it's going to be a big issue. And then they rolled out the patch like 4 months before the end of the year for everybody's computers. But it's like there was still, I remember so many people were still just panicked, like what's going to happen? Are the plane's going to fall out of the sky? And there could have been some real scenarios, but I don't think it's anything close to what we're dealing with right now.
Well, and with Y2K, it wasn't even just about the computers and the tech. It was people were worried about the electrical grid going down, disruption in their grid services, water, sewer, all those kinds of things that people had no clue if it was really going to go down or what was going to happen. So
yeah,
they were wanting to prepare. It wasn't so much, hey, come and make sure my computer doesn't die. It was more make sure if my lights go out, what can I do? If I don't have access to city water, what can I do? Setting up rain catchment, rain collection, storage, those kinds of things is what was really that people were looking for during Y2K.
That's awesome.
No, I totally remember. Like I was going to college at the same time, and if the power went out January 1st, I was like, okay, it's cold. I was in Utah at that time. Then I moved to Arizona, and I'm like, man, if I'd lived down here and Y2K would have really gone off, I would have hated life in the summer because I cannot handle heat. Right? It's my Achilles heel. I'm not a heat tolerant person. But right now it's like you watch what's going on. I mean, you had no power for 6 days? Am I getting the days right?
6 days, yeah.
6 days, no power, no utilities, no nothing.
Yeah, apparently where I am in New Mexico, they are prone to very high winds that generally stay up high in the treetops. But these are like Santa Ana winds. They're just, they swirl, they change direction, they're unpredictable. And they took out about 38,000 people in the county where I am, which is close to El Paso. And they only have so many crews. This county apparently is huge, but very sparse on public workers. And so they don't, it takes time for them to get power restored. And I'm up at around 7,900 feet. And we were some of the last ones to get power back on. So, my friend who is also a client, luckily is ready with generators, and he's got the battery banks. And, so we did have power in that respect, but it was very limited. You can't run everything. So you only run the necessities. You want to keep your food cold, and you got to keep heat because it's wintertime and it does get cold here. So.
Oh yeah. Well, how large is your living space where you're at?
I'm currently in my cargo trailer. It's an 8.5 by 20 foot cargo trailer, which I am in the process of getting as a mobile studio, overlanding Nomadlander type trailer.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
So I can be mobile if I need to be.
That's awesome. Here's one of the things I love to tell people is like, when it comes to emergency prep, when it comes to like surviving the winter, surviving inclement weather without power, stuff like that, you want a smaller space to occupy, enough space so that you're not all over each other and driving each other crazy, but a smaller space to heat. It's going to use a lot less fuel. And the less fuel you have to use, the longer you can maintain that quality of life that you're in at the moment.
Exactly.
And so
what got you started? I was just going to ask, what got you started in this? What was your motivation to get and become an expert in this self-reliance and whatnot, so that you could have clients. And then what do you, when you do meet with somebody, or when somebody finds you, what are some of the processes you go through to help them get ready and be prepared? What are some of the things you're seeing out there right now?
Well, I got started. I've been self-reliant my entire life. As a child, I was self-reliant. My mom hated it because, she wanted to be, she was a single mom. She wanted to be a mom, and I didn't want, a mom doting over me. I was independent. And from the time I was 10 years old, we moved into an apartment complex that had a big wooded area behind it. And I was in the woods from the time I was 10 till, my current day, as much as I could be.
Nice.
She'd have to come hunting me down. It was, the rule was, when the streetlights come on, you come home. And I wouldn't come home because there was no streetlight for me to see in the woods.
That's awesome.
So many times we had discussions about me being in the woods past dusk. But I built forts and, dug little like bear dens to make shelters, and, just all the things that, a kid normally does. And I had an uncle who took me out in the summertime, took me camping, took me in the woods, taught me, navigation, taught me, fire starting, taught me all these skills. And it just, so when I wasn't with him, I was addicted, man. I mean, I wanted to be in the woods. And so, and when I turned 18, I've been involved in the martial arts since I've been 5, studied.
We lost you.
Oh yeah, he froze up there. Oh no, maybe he lost his power again or what? But
Well, one of the things while we're waiting for him to come back, one of the things I wanted to share, he sent us an article that he wrote recently, and there was a section in there on the second page. I don't want to go too far into it, but I was like, Shane. As soon as I read it, I was like, Shane.
Well, yeah, me reading this is like we're brothers,
Yeah.
We think very much alike in the way he's going about things. There's a few things.
Let me quote this, and you'll know exactly why I said Shane.
Go ahead,
What we call prepping in the modern cult of a society is in fact simply the ways our ancestors lived.
I have a highlight.
Oh, you've got to highlight it too. Our ancestors lived day to day, not more than 50 to 70 years ago, which to many may seem like a long time ago, but in reality is not. It has taken that short amount of time for society to unlearn and really have no clue how to live as our grandparents and great-grandparents once did.
Yeah, I was thinking that paragraph there is kind of the heart of this article he wrote here. I couldn't agree more. From what I say all the time, I probably bore the heck out of you guys. Look to the past to prepare for the future. And 50 years, yeah, to me, I'm 50. It doesn't seem like that long ago. So I can have a little bit of a view, not as much as Backroads does with his experience, but I wish he was on here because I got some other good questions I want to ask him. Is he?
I think it's funny.
I'm like, where is he? He's got the link, so as soon as he can hop back in, we'll have him hop back in.
I think it's funny that he said that the normal stuff kids do, and I'm like, yeah, that's back in your day. That's what the normal stuff kids do. But
I was the same way. Yeah,
I was too. Well, I think it's about proximity of where you live to the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't have the woods, but I had high mountain plains. And so there was a creek that ran through the fields out past our house. And so I was out there chasing prairie dogs, watching the birds fly, building shelters. I was catching bull snakes and making sure we weren't near any of the rattlesnakes because we have rattlesnakes where I was. So all of that, like that was where I spent my childhood. As soon as we moved to Colorado as a kid, I was like, gone. I found the fields and I was like, gone. When I was in Idaho, I was 6 years old. And I got a bicycle and I was gone. My buddy Doug and my buddy Wesley, and we were in the farmer fields getting yelled at. We were chasing cows. We were playing in the creek. Like it's just what we did, and learned a ton of skills: knot tying, lashing.
You built confidence as well, just being in the outdoors. So when you experience some kind of emergency, it doesn't seem like an emergency to you. It's not an emergency at all because you already know what to do in certain situations where you're not around all of these niceties that we have, all the electronics and everything they have that makes our life so easy. There he is.
Hey, we got you back. You were just starting to talk about martial arts, and it froze up on us. So we're glad you got
Everything
back
just
in.
shut. Yeah, everything just shut up. We're still having wins, and everything just shut off and then came back on. So this is just crazy here.
All right, so tell us about your 5-year martial arts. You were telling us your history, and then you were going to move into how you teach people, and what are people asking you about right now, and getting ready for what's coming.
Yeah, so when I was 5 years old, being that I was of a single parent family with my mom, she enrolled me in martial arts. I started like ubiquitous Taekwondo, like everyone else did back in the late 60s, early 70s, and that blossomed over the years into getting into other combatives, Japanese martial arts, and then some hand-to-hand combatives. And my instructor's brother was the head instructor for the Marine Corps at Camp Lejeune, and they asked me if I would be interested in going to be his assistant. So I became a DoD contractor, the Department of Navy attached to the Marines, and spent 6 years assisting in teaching combatives and some other things with the Marine Corps.
Awesome.
Did a little bit of government work, and when I found out what the government was all about, I got out of that as quickly as I could. And all of the skills from my uncle, and I had gone through a course when I turned 18 with Morris Kahansky. If anybody knows who he is, he's basically the godfather of bushcraft up in Canada, who we recently lost a few years ago, and got into a lot of being self-reliant. I don't like the term survival, and I don't like it because survival it denotes someone who has survived like cancer, who survived a horrific car crash, things of that nature. When you're taking gear out in the woods and you're practicing skills, you are self-reliant. You're not surviving. Mm-hmm. People who are caught out in the wilderness, or even in a city disaster with no knowledge, no equipment, those are survivalists. So you're a self-reliant person. That's why it's field tac self-reliance. It's field tactics and self-reliance. That's where the name came from. And it makes sense because even if you're in the city, you're in the field, and you need to learn tactics. And it's not necessarily tactics like, military tactics. It's tactics that will keep you alive and keep you sustained until you can better your situation, or things kind of get back to some semblance of normalcy, which we're starting to see after what happened in 2020. But now with the uptick of what's going on in the country and the world, I think we might be diving right back down into the sewer of. So my skill set, the things I had learned, really, and things I've been doing throughout my entire life with being self-reliant, is where I had some friends that wanted me to start teaching them skills. And then they said, hey, when Y2K started becoming popular, they said, hey, I have an aunt and uncle, they need to know what to do. And I have a brother, I have a sister, I have a mom and dad. And it just started spreading. And I got, word of mouth. And I needed a business name, and I came up with Field Tac Self-Reliance because that's what made sense to me. And it just kind of blossomed from there. Nice. And as I said, I've been self-reliant since I've been a child. I mean, I didn't want my mom dressing me. From a young age, I wanted to know how to make my own breakfast. I wanted to know how to cook. I started cooking with my aunt when I was 10, and my mom when I was 10, and baking and all that stuff. And I'm of the mindset that I don't want to have to rely on someone else to take care of me. I want to be able to take care of myself, sustain myself. I want to know how to cook. I want to know how to sew. I want to know how to do, wrench on my vehicles, how to build a house. I had an uncle who was a carpenter, taught me carpentry from the time I was 10. Another uncle was an auto body technician. He taught me auto body repair. An old gentleman that I grew up around who was the guy was just a phenomenal mechanic. A vehicle could roll up, he could hear it and tell you exactly what was wrong with it. And he was right 10 times out of 10. So, wow. and when I learn something, I delve in. I want to learn from the best, and I want to know the most I can know about it. I don't have to be a so-called expert, but I want to know enough that I can sustain and be able to be self-reliant without having to run to somebody. Now, there are things that are going to come up. I mean, I can rebuild the transmission. Is it something I want to do? No. Am I fully equipped to do it? No. So that I might have to take to a shop. But I want to be able to know enough that when I go in there, I'm not going to get ripped off as well. So those are some things that, that people should also be aware of is know your basics so that you don't get ripped off, whether it's construction, auto mechanics, what have you.
Well, basically what you're saying though is like you go back to like the 80s, the 70s, 60s, 50s. You know enough to not get swindled, right? But what we call this is street smarts, like self-reliance, street smarts, and then you got your wilderness survival skills is wilderness living. Like I was enamored with that as a kid, and so that's what I got into. That's why my mom got me into scouts. I was like, I need to go live in the woods, and my mom's like, hold on, kid, get back here. and so instead she made me cook and clean and learn a bunch of skills at home, which I found to be absolutely fantastic for me. But keep going. Like what are some of the other skills and things that people are coming to you saying, hey, I need to learn these things? Like specifically, what are the biggest, I would say 3 or 4 things that they need to know?
Well, right now, as you can imagine, the biggest thing that people want to know is how to protect themselves with, what our government is trying to take away from us. That's the biggest thing.
Okay.
The second thing is combatives. Not every situation is going to dictate that you unholster and unload, because it may be a situation where the person who is confronting you and attacking you, that maybe they don't have something like that. Maybe they're just crazy and are attacking you with a stick or a bat or a pipe or a piece of rebar or whatever. You need to know how to take care of that situation. So hand-to-hand combatives, a lot of people say, oh, I don't need any of that stuff. I'll just pull out my pew-pew and take care of it. Well, okay, yeah, but you're 9 times out of 10 you're going to find yourself in prison, and that's not going to be a joyride. So people are seriously taking this stuff to be ready to handle the situation that comes. So, and people aren't even really, that I'm dealing with, aren't even into, hey, I want to have 6 years worth of food storage. I want to have, all this water. They want to know what they need, because it could come to a situation. I mean, I've got people talking to me like, hey, we're thinking this could end up like a Red Dawn. And it very well could be. I mean, we are, the current administration is so in bed with the communists, who I'm talking about, that we could have an invasion like that, and they would let them walk right in the front door. I mean, they pretty much are at the southern border. All the fentanyl that's coming across is coming from over there, and
they've already sold good portions of the U.S. to them as well.
Exactly. And now we're having governors that are standing up to and stopping this, which I applaud them. Kristi Noem and DeSantis, I applaud them for saying, hey, no, it's not going to happen here. But anything is possible. We think we're the securest country in the world. At this point, we're not. Our military is sorely lacking. Recruitment is down. It's over 70%. It's the lowest it's been in the history of this country. And the people who are trying to even go into recruitment can't, because they physically can't pass muster to even get in. I mean, not even the basics of like the Air Force. That's pretty sad.
It's crazy that
in the Air Force,
the when you're the most vulnerable is when you think you're the least vulnerable, because you aren't preparing properly, because you think everything's okay. You've said to yourself, well, we're living in the greatest country in the world. We have all these great, resources. We have stores that are right around the corner. We have, I have police officers that could come at a moment's notice. I've given away all of my freedoms to have these securities. Of course I'll be okay. And that's actually the one of the stages before you get taken over. And if you think about history and any of these major countries that have fallen, and these major empires that have fallen or been taken over, it's when they are least expecting it, that's when they get taken out. And I think that, for in many ways, we're not really expecting. Well, there's several of us that are waking up more and more and more. I think that's really awesome. I've been really excited about how many people are waking up, but at the same time, I'm also scared to death that there's way too few of us.
And we've watching everyone who's worried about their identity more than anything else. what gender they think they might be that day, that's not going to matter when they're hungry and they don't have food storage and they don't know how to find food in the wild.
And
Or they don't know how
one
to
of the
build a
reasons
shelter to keep safe overnight.
Yeah, one of the reasons we've gotten here is just like you were saying, Backroads, is we're not spending time out in the woods. We're not spending time digging holes in the ground and building shelters like we did when we were kids. We all did that, and it's all about looking back to, like you say here, and I totally agree with you, looking back to our ancestors, the way they lived, and I have found I wasn't terribly interested in learning about my ancestors when my parents were alive, or learning about really how they grew up. But now I'm incredibly interested because I've gone through life to a certain extent, and I'm trying to teach my kids that as well. Hey, look back at how I lived. I want you to have these types of experiences. And for the most part, they're not interested. It takes to get to the point where I'm now in my 30s or 40s or 50s, whatever, and now I'm interested, and then it's too late for all intents and purposes. And so if we can steer our kids back to wanting to go out and fish, wanting to go out and be, like you say, be self-reliant, I think that is a good start to fixing a lot of these problems. And because you recognize what freedoms we've lost, because we grow up in it. I grew up in this system, and I didn't know we've lost most of our freedoms or rights before I was born, in 1972, and I didn't realize that until the last decade or so. And so I think you're absolutely right here. We're in a vicious cycle, like you said. This is a vicious cycle, and how do we break it? How do we teach people to and give them that the desire that we love to be self-sufficient?
Well, you look, a prime example is people. There's people that have no clue who Aaron Brockovich is. I mean, we have young people that, they're like, who is this woman? Where she's come out of the woodwork and started, cheering for the people of East Palestine and saying, hey, something needs to be done. And people don't realize, what she did for the people of Hinckley, California. And we have these disasters that happen. We have factories that have exploded throughout the years, chemical factories, and it's here today, gone tomorrow. It's not in our mind. And we have train derailments that happen. We don't normally have them of the magnitude of the one in East Palestine, but you look at these situations and they're here today and gone tomorrow. People's memories are very short, and they don't recount these things. There's a lot of these that people are bringing up what's happened in the past, and I've heard people go, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I have so many people now that have contacted me that their wives were never really, or girlfriends were never really into, the quote unquote prepping lifestyle, but they're waking up and now they're saying, hey, you know what? Maybe you weren't such a crazy nut for wanting to store all this stuff, or wanting to learn how to procure water, or how to, do this or do that. And there's more and more waking up. And I have some people are like, yeah, but what do I haven't done anything since Y2K. It's too late. It's never too late. You're never too late to be ready for what is happening. Your precious gift of life, you only get one shot at it. You don't get to get back in line for a second ticket on the merry-go-round of life. You only get one, and that's it. So you better live it fully. You better be prepared, and you better be self-reliant for what you need to do with what is coming down the pike right now, right here and right now. I'm not, people aren't, like I said before, the people that I'm dealing with aren't worried about 6, 10, 20 years down the road. They're worried about right now. What's going to happen in the next 6 months and the next year? What do I need to do to be ready for that now? You need to learn how to procure water, because if the water gets tainted, like what it looks like they're trying to do to us, then we're going to be in a world of hurt, because without water, it's game over. It doesn't matter if there's nuclear missiles. It doesn't matter if there's war. If we don't have clean, potable drinking water, it's game over. That's the number one thing. And it's killing off wildlife. It's killing off livestock. It's killing off domestic pets, and it's affecting people with rashes, with burning lungs, with, coughing up blood, all these different things that are happening. And is this going to happen in other places? Well, it already has. It happened in Texas. We had that tanker that overturned. It's happened, other places around the country. We've had 4 since East Palestine train derailments.
Mhm.
Only one of them had, a fire. The semi had a fire, and now we're having all these plants that are blowing up. We're having food processing plants that are mysteriously having planes fly into them, egg plants that are mysteriously blowing up, and chickens dying. Chickens that aren't laying eggs. This is not coincidence. This is by design, and
Mhm.
you better know how to sustain through it, or it's game over. It's that simple.
Yeah, we're
Well,
on
one
the
of the
same
things
page.
I
Definitely.
hear a lot of people are worrying about keeping their the norm. Well, I got to make sure I can have my TV on and I can have, and it's like stuff is fine to have, but if you don't
Mhm.
have any skills, the stuff is worthless when things go sideways. And it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. The three of us, we look at it very, very much from a biblical standpoint, and we know, according to the Bible, that it's going to get weird, right?
Mhm.
But any person with just a semblance of sense watching the news, seeing what's gone on the last 6 months in the news cycle, let alone the last 15, 20 years in the news cycle, you're right. People have a short attention span and a very, very short memory.
Mhm.
And if you're not into preparing, if you're not taking time to prepare, it's easy to forget all those things. But if you're prepping, it's easy to remember all those things.
And
I
people
think
want to be comfortable. Sorry, go ahead, Paris.
No, I was just going to kind of speak to what you were talking about earlier. That kind of the 2 or 3 or 4 things that you're seeing a lot of people asking about, being involved in combatives and martial arts and training and being aware of what's happening. I was watching scrolling through my Twitter, I think, and there were several videos of different parts of the country where they were fighting. Like it was a racial issue of some kind where there was people with black skin were just walking through the streets beating up on people with white skin, and vice versa, or whatever. And I'm just thinking, this racial war that we're bringing up and causing is not. It's to divide us and cause these contentions. And if I'm walking down the street just minding my own business, and somebody comes up and pulls a gun on me or tries to pop me in the head, or a mob tries to I need to know how to defend myself. And this is happening more and more and more. And different cities, of course, are more prone to it. The bigger the city, the more prone you're going to have. So if you're living in those bigger cities, you really want to make sure you're preparing. If you're living in a more rural city, or a less, maybe a city that's not as big or filled with homelessness or other situations like that, you might still train and be ready, but it's not as in your face. So I just wanted to say I couldn't believe what I was seeing as on my Twitter. Obviously, Twitter's got a whole bunch of issues, but I was just thinking these people are videotaping it, like they're just fighting and just over nothing. And it's happening more and more. And in classrooms, there was another kid that just came into the teacher and started beating, like screaming in the teacher's face. And so we're seeing it more and more in normal places that we wouldn't ever think about being a place of violence, or a place where you might get attacked or have to worry about being attacked. And I think that's critical, like you were talking about, getting to train and really understanding how to defend yourself. What else are you seeing, Backroads?
Well, yeah, and to your point, you look at cities like New York where you're walking down the street and someone just comes up out of the blue and blindsides you, and how many people have had sustained traumatic brain injuries, or lost an eye because they got hit in an eye and it shattered the orbital socket, and then they were blinded one eye. These things are happening. These kids today have no compunction about just walking up and just beating the crap out of somebody. I mean, they're playing these video games, like Grand Theft Auto and all these others, where it looks so realistic that then there's these challenges that become, hey, let's go out and do this to people on the street. These are all things that you need to be prepared for, just in daily life. But more to the point is, with everything we're facing on the brink of global nuclear war, people want to live through it. They need to start thinking about, what am I going to do in the fallout of the radioactive material that's going to rain down on us? I mean, that's going to be 10 times worse, 100 times worse than the cloud of hydrochloric acid that has rained down from the East Palestine burning of the chemicals. So, you need to start thinking, where am I going to go? Houses aren't going to be protection from radioactive fallout. It's going to seep through. Houses are not airtight. You need to have some place that you can go, you can seal yourself in. If you have a bunch of food storage and things of that nature, that radioactive material can affect any dry goods that you have that aren't sealed, any canned goods that, it can penetrate through metal and cause, radioactive material to pass through the metal. These are all things that people aren't thinking about. This is the immediate threat at this point, is what am I going to do if Russia launches that first missile?
Mhm.
I mean, people in places like Washington, D.C., Denver, Colorado, Seattle, Washington, L.A., these are the major hubs that are going to be attacked because, China knows where all of our big military infrastructure is. They were just flying balloons over it. They know where our ICBMs are.
Mhm.
They know where our military installations are. And at this point, they have a stranglehold on us because most of our manufacturing comes out of China. So anybody that's in this country that owns a business that's overseas, they're kowtowing. And with China and Russia aligning like they're doing, people need to look at the big picture. They need to stop looking, see the forest and not just the trees. They need to understand that we need to prepare for what is coming right now, not what's going to happen. So, I have people that are like, hey, can I get a survival shelter? And at this point, unless you have $200,000-$300,000, you're not getting a survival shelter, because the companies that are building them right now are so backlogged, and they're charging an arm and a leg. Why? Because the demand is high, and so they can exactly, and that's exactly what they're doing. So you need to find a secondary means of how you can get a shelter.
Yeah, I talked to Ron over at Atlas last year at the Preparedness Expo in here in Utah, and he just laughed. I was like, "So, how's business?" I'm like, "I'm assuming it's really, really good for you." And he just laughed. He goes, "I'm turning away orders every day. People will come in, and he's like, "What's your budget?" And they're like, "Oh, 20,000." He's like, "I can't help you."
Yeah.
Well, that leads to the
6-figure budgets. He's like, "There's nothing below that anymore."
It leads to the topic, and I think we're on the same page. Backroads is about bugging out. Bugging out is definitely overly used, but there's going to be a time and a place for it. But you got to be prepared for it, right? We're talking, I guess, right now, kind of about what do we do. We talked about things that could be going on and happening that are happening, and I would say that all the things that we've been preparing for years, for decades, could happen at any moment at this point. I mean, we're to the point where everything has come together, and anything could happen at this point. And like you're saying, I don't know if I agree that we're going to see a whole lot of nukes dropped on cities, but I think it will be more in isolated events. But you've got to get out of the cities, and that's really what bugging out is. It's not about okay, we're going to walk from here to who knows where. We haven't planned where we're going. And so bugging out is important thing to consider, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah. Well,
another thing go ahead.
No, well, in cities especially, I mean, most cities, you live in high-rise condos, high-rise apartments. It's not like having a house where you might have a basement or a root cellar that you could even go down and fortify to be protected from the fallout. You're a sitting duck in a city, and trying to get out of a city in the event that something was happening, you're basically screwed, because the roadways in and out are just going to be jam packed. It's going to be literal parking lot, and I bring up cities because that's going to be the first place that any country that might attack us, that's where they're going to go for, is the major cities, because those are the major infrastructures that kind of run everything. Big business and financial and everything else is run out of New York, LA, Atlanta, Seattle, so those are the hubs where you really, if you're living in those areas, you really should be paying attention to what's going on and have a plan B, because if you don't have a plan B, you're screwed.
So I just shared a link in the chat, and anyone that wants to check it out, energyjustice.net /map/nuclear operating. You can actually see, you can test different types of nuke scenarios right over your house. And it will tell you how long it's going to take for the decay to actually complete, the half-life of that radiation. So look at all that, and you can kind of see, what would really happen in your scenario, and kind of start making plans for that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I was thinking
people. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Backroads.
No, you're okay. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, like, so, as far as a timeline is concerned on some of this stuff, I was listening to another guy. I don't know if you ever heard of Joel Skousen. He does the world affairs briefs, pretty well known in understanding kind of these global issues and the globalists and the high level, people that were trying to take over the world kind of stuff. Anyways, he was talking about in the next 3 to 5 years, he could very easily see World War III getting hot and getting to the point where we're really in it. And so before that, though, potentially all these different things like economic collapses or restructuring of different things. And right now I was listening to, I think it's Carl Malone, right? Is Carl Maloney?
Oh, Mike Maloney.
Mike Maloney. Sorry. Mike Maloney was talking about.
Yeah,
right. That's
a player.
I am so don't have a
Utah
clue.
Jazz.
I'll try to if this wasn't live, I would edit that out before we put it out. Anyways, the point is that Mike Maloney was talking about how with the CBDCs, we can totally track our money and our expenditures. And they can even say, look, this currency, I'm not going to allow that. The government could come in and say, I'm not going to allow that currency to go even let you buy gold or buy silver or buy, they can actually control what you buy and what you sell with that, with these digital currencies. So what is your time frame? I know that you talked about like right now is like 6 months, or right now could be even honestly with the way we got to prepare, 3 to 5 years is not that far away. And so what are you seeing as like the timeline of events as it kind of unfolds to that point where we might see a potential, let's say we do see an invasion or a nuclear war. What do you see the events that unfold as we get to that?
Well, something has to happen before the 2024 election. I mean, if you think about it, because they have their puppet in the office right now. Everything has escalated with him in office. And if something doesn't happen before the 2024 election, they're going to lose their opportunity, because people in this country are fed up, and he's not going to hold on to office. I have no doubt about that. If we get another Democrat in the office, we're going to have the same thing. But they have their main puppet right now. You look at how he has flip-flopped from when he was a senator up until now he's president, and everything that he stood for before has completely gone 180 degrees. Yeah. So they have to institute something happening. We have all the warmongers in place. That's why they're pushing for this war. It has to be done in the next year and a half. It's that simple, or they're going to lose their opportunity.
Interesting.
That's crazy. That's legit. I think do you feel like there's going to be an economic collapse too in between now and then?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we'll look at the recession we're already in. I mean, it's not sustainable with what we're doing. All the money that we're giving to Ukraine, all of the, shortages. I'm going into Walmart here where I am, and other grocery stores, and there's so many shelves that are bare, so many spots that are bare. Oh, there's shortages. Oh, we can't get this. Oh, that food plant, can't produce it. It blew up, or it was, a plane flew into it, and we're not getting those products. The egg shortage, there's dairy shortage, there's, all these shortages. It's going to implode. And they have to do something to be able to institute martial law. If not a full-out war, they have to do something to institute martial law so that they can stall the election. Because if martial law goes into effect, they can then say, hey, there's not going to be an election during martial law. And then we're going to look at martial law, curfews, more disruptions in our services, more disruptions in our supply chains. It's just a never-ending crumbling of the road. And if you don't get over that bumpy road now, you're going to be stuck.
Yeah, and I know you consider this that we the people are under attack. Am I wrong there?
Yes.
This, like you said,
No.
this is an intentional. I totally agree with you. This is planned, and I think they're going about it so they obviously know what they're doing, and so as to be very confusing in their methods and their approach. In that it doesn't look like it's on purpose, but those of us who are watching, we can see it as plain as day, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. It's not an opinion, that's fact. I mean, you know, it's kind of funny. A lot of the people that I watch on YouTube and follow and that I know, you know, they're saying, hey, y'all were calling us conspiracy theorists, but now it's turned out to be conspiracy fact. I mean, everything that's been said over the last 18 months or so, it's coming to fruition, and it's just going to keep progressing. They just keep pushing this agenda, and they're not even hiding it anymore. That's the thing. You know, it's slapping us in the face, and the people that are saying there's nothing going on, everything's fine, everything's copacetic, you know, we're just on an even keel. Our country's getting better. Seriously? I don't know how anyone can say that at this point.
Yeah, with all the people that are
people,
with all the people that are dying suddenly from certain, you know,
Mhm.
safe and things that were supposedly safe and effective, and all the different things that are coming out about, you know, on Twitter about the lies and the manipulations that were done with the Hunter Biden laptops. And, you know, the House of Representatives says that they're going to come out with some lawsuit and they're going to put, you know, get justice. But come on, how much faith do we have in that at this point? So you're right. You're absolutely right, Backroads.
I mean, this population control has been talked about since basically the 1960s, late 50s, early 60s, and it was ramped up, you know, more so with Soros, you know, infiltrating this country, and then Bill Gates talking about it, and all these other billionaires are talking about population control, and now
Eugenics.
they're doing things. Yeah, they're doing things to unleash population control on this country and around the world, but more specifically this country, because, you know, the Japanese didn't invade us during World War II because, you know, behind every blade of grass was a rifle, and that's even more so now than what it was back then. So they have to do something. The COOF didn't do it. You know, they're still pushing for the mandatory injections, and they're now talking about rolling out, you know, the cards to, you know, if you don't have it, you don't show your card, you can't get your money out of the bank. You can't, you know, your money shouldn't be in the bank. Number one, you should keep your cash and only pay what you have to pay by putting a little bit in the bank at a time. The rest of it should be in your pocket, not going to them. But if we get into a serious situation where we do go into World War III, you know, even things like gold and silver, they're really not going to matter that much. The things that are going to matter are fuel, cigarettes, alcohol, food, things that people, you know, the vice things especially, people are going to want those, because that's how a lot of people get, you know, have to deal with the reality of what's going on, is through drinking and smoking and all those kinds of things. So those are going to become very high dollar commodities. Ammunition, pew-pews, you know, all those things. Fuel, maybe some fuel for heating or things of that nature, but vehicles, I don't think you're going to have much in the way of vehicle travel at that point. You know, so, but you're going to need, basically gold and silver is going to become unvaluable due to the fact that, well, you know, if we're under attack, what am I going to do with this bar of gold or this bar of silver? You know, I need food, I need ammunition, I need, you know, alcohol, I need cigarettes because I'm addicted. Medications are going to become one of the top priorities. People are going to need medication because
clean water is going to be through the roof. Like, people are going to be begging for it. One of the things I've really tried to get people thinking about is, what are my other water resources where I am, you know, and what have I actually got stored on hand? Because some people are like, oh, there's a lake here, I'm fine. Well, look at what's going on in Palestine. Like,
right,
you can't drink the water that's flowing over there. It's all bad.
Exactly.
So you've got to have something so you can because that's a bug out scenario, right? That's a scenario. Okay, we've got to go to the in-laws on the other side of the state. You know, let's take the water and resources we have that we can take with us to get to there. Other than that, bugging out, I think, and you guys will probably all agree, bugging out is the dumbest idea in prepping. Where are you going to freaking go? If you don't have
it is a dumb idea.
It's foolish.
Yeah, it is. But on the other hand, if you're living in some place like Salt Lake City where there's a lot of industry and it's attacked, you're going to have to get the hell out of Dodge. I mean,
Right.
you know,
But again,
It's called strategically location. Yeah.
You're looking,
Right.
you're have a predetermined place you need to go that has other people and resources. Otherwise, you're going to become a leech to someone else, and they're not going to want to have you. Right? If some Tom, Dick, or Harry showed up at your door and said, "Hey, I'm a refugee, and times are tough. Can you help me?" You're going to be very leery of that stranger, and that's what all the people living in the country are going to be like. What are you doing on my land?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of public land where, you know, you could hide in plain sight, you know,
if you have
make your own bunker, things of that nature, if you have the skills, right? Well, that's my point is now is the time to start learning those skills.
Yeah.
And start getting ready. I mean, you know, it's like people that want to buy flood insurance after the flood has already hit. You know, it's too late. You can't buy it after the fact. You have to have it before. So you have to have those skills before, and now is the time. And that's why I've been, you know, so busy with people calling me saying, you know, a lot of people that I dealt with at Y2K, like I said earlier, that are saying, hey, what do I need to do? You know, if you are a quote unquote prepper and you're all stocked up, you got all kinds of food, you got all kinds of ammo, water, all these resources. The problem is you can't take all of that if you do need to leave your house where you're living. So you need to be prepared to be able to sustain with that which you can just carry. And if you can't take a vehicle very far, you're going to have to carry it on your back, or somehow pull it behind you, a wagon, a sled, whatever the case might be, depending on if it's summer or winter. You need to pare down what you're going to be able to take with you and effectively, you know, sustain and be self-reliant with what you have basically on your back.
What's funny, we're out of time, but what's funny is I want to bring up, we live in Utah, the three of us hosting, and we have what's called Pioneer Day every 24th of July. And we celebrate these pioneers who trekked across what's now the United States, the plains into the Rockies, then to here, to what was a wasteland, basically. Not really any resources, very little water flowing into the valley at the time. And they had to build an entire civilization. They had no other choice but to abandon where they were. And so they came to this place. And we celebrate this every year, and we have fireworks, and we have all these things, but we don't look and learn about how they lived, how they made that journey deep enough to really understand and figure out, can I do this if I have to do this? And that's what I think everyone needs to really look at right now. Going back to what you said, learn hand-to-hand combatives, learn how to forage, how to find food, learn escape and evasion tactics, learn counter tracking, learn how to clean water, how to clean wounds, how to take care of medical situations with no hospital, you know, with no first aid kit, with no antibiotics. Right. Those are the things everyone needs to be spending more time looking into and learning about and doing. So in closing, guys, you've got time. We've got this. There's never been a better time to be alive in accessibility of information. We've got these devices in our pockets that have a wealth of knowledge. If we'd spend our time, instead of TikToking and Facebooking and all the other crap, and actually go learn something, download lessons, take a class, go to the local community center because they have classes, go to the local college annex programs and learn. There's cooking classes. There's classes. I've seen classes on learning how to cook Dutch oven. There's classes on growing a garden, in homesteading. We've got this huge, fantastic movement of homesteading in America right now that needs to infect every home. And if you live in the suburbs, start urban homesteading. Do what you can where you are and learn to find other resources. Get creative. That's the message of today: is be aware of everything that's going on. Don't be afraid of it, but start taking action. Because Scott, every day spent not taking action is a lost opportunity.
Yep. Scott, before you close it out totally, how can people get a hold of you, Backroads, if people want to reach out or learn more from you? And do you have a channel? You said you talked about YouTube, but do you still have a channel up and running? What can we do to learn more from your expertise?
Yeah, I still have my Backroads Nomadlander channel, but FTSR group at gmail.com is the best way for, all the self-reliance and preparedness stuff.
Well, we want to thank you again for being on today. Took a couple weeks for us to get it all together to make it happen. So thank you for being here with us. Thanks for being part of our audience, but also part of our educational circle. Guys, when you see him in the chats, you'll know that he knows what he's talking about. When you listen to him in the podcast, when this hits the waves and you guys start listening to this, we hope that you guys steer your way over and start learning as well from him, because he's a fantastic resource and we're grateful to have you here. Grateful for you guys, the audience, to be participating. We've had so many fantastic comments tonight and questions. So stay tuned, stay in tune, and stay ready-minded. We will catch you guys on the next episode.
Hey, yeah, thanks for coming on.
Take care.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely.